In a city torn by prejudice, Maya, a resilient black woman, finds herself entangled in a forbidden love affair with Ryan, a white police officer harboring a conflicted soul. Their relationship ignites a firestorm of hate and resentment, drawing them into a battle against a society unwilling to accept their love. As they face intimidation, betrayal, and the threat of violence, they cling to each other, testing the boundaries of love in the face of hatred. But will their love survive the dangerous path they've chosen, or will it end in tragedy? This story explores the limits of passion and the courage it takes to defy the odds for love. Please hit the subscription button and like the video. I believe you've done that not yet started. Detective Ryan Cole prided himself on his career, his sharp instincts, and his strict adherence to law and order. Yet, beneath his tough exterior lay years of ingrained prejudice that he'd never challenged. To him, his role as a cop was simple: keep the streets clean, enforce the law, and stick to his own narrow worldview. Everything was straightforward, or so he thought. One evening, during a routine patrol, he was dispatched to a quiet neighborhood that had recently seen a rise in minor disturbances. It was here, amid the modest houses and dimly lit streets, that he first saw her. As Ryan stepped out of his patrol car, he noticed Maya standing near the corner store, her presence striking and captivating in a way that caught him off guard. She was graceful and self-assured, her dark skin glowing under the streetlights, her eyes sharp and filled with a quiet confidence. Ryan felt an odd, unsettling mix of attraction and discomfort. This wasn't a part of town he'd lingered in before, and he wasn't used to feeling so out of place. Maya noticed his gaze, and for a moment, their eyes met. Her expression was unreadable, calm but piercing, as if she could see right through him. Ryan's heartbeat quickened, an unfamiliar rush filling his chest. He quickly looked away, attempting to dismiss the strange sensation. Yet as he drove away, her image lingered in his mind, unsettling him in a way he couldn't quite place. He found himself replaying the brief encounter, trying to shake off the magnetic pull she seemed to have over him. This wasn't how things were supposed to go, he thought, clenching the steering wheel tighter. A cop like him, drawn to someone so different, someone he'd been conditioned to avoid. He'd have to push this memory aside, he told himself. But deep down, he knew it wouldn't be that easy. Days passed, but Maya's image seemed imprinted in Ryan's mind. He would remember her piercing eyes at the oddest moments, her gaze coming back to him like a haunting refrain. Each time he tried to push it away, it seemed to return with more force. Despite his attempts to forget, Ryan soon found himself back in the same neighborhood, as if some invisible force had guided him there. Officially, he was responding to a noise complaint, but he knew part of him had hoped to catch a glimpse of her again. Sure enough, he saw her, this time outside a cafe, laughing with a friend. The sound of her laughter was warm, a stark contrast to the coldness he often felt in his line of work. His pulse quickened, and against his better judgment, he let himself watch for a moment. She was radiant, her smile illuminating her face, and Ryan felt that same strange pull he'd experienced the first time. Their eyes met briefly, and this time, she held his gaze a bit longer, a small, knowing smile playing on her lips. Ryan looked away quickly, heat rising to his face, feeling foolish. He wasn't the type to be rattled by anyone, much less someone so different from the world he knew. Later that night, as he lay in bed, Ryan replayed the encounter over and over. What was it about her that left him so shaken? He tried to reason with himself, to chalk it up to a fleeting fascination. But deep down, he knew that his rigid beliefs were starting to feel just a bit hollow. His fascination with her was breaking through his defenses, cracking open questions he didn't want to answer. And with each passing day, the pull toward her only grew stronger. Ryan tried to keep his distance, but fate seemed determined to cross their paths. A week later, after a long day on the force, he went to a local bar, hoping to unwind. It was one of his usual haunts, a place where the regulars were familiar faces and the atmosphere was comfortably predictable. He was nursing his drink when he spotted her. Maya was seated at the bar alone, scrolling through her phone. She looked up and met his gaze, a flicker of recognition crossing her face. Ryan's pulse raced. He considered turning away, ignoring the spark he felt. But something in him resisted. Against every bit of logic he could summon, he found himself walking over. "Didn't expect to see you here," he muttered, his voice rougher than he intended. Maya raised an eyebrow, a hint of amusement in her eyes. "The city's a small place, detective. Or are you following me?" The accusation in her words stung, though her tone was light. Ryan shook his head, trying to keep his composure. "No, just thought I'd say hi." "Hi, then." She smiled, and Ryan felt an inexplicable warmth spread through him. They started talking, the initial tension melting away as their conversation flowed more easily than he'd expected. Maya was witty, sharp, and insightful, her laughter infectious. She wasn't like anyone he'd ever met, her confidence and grace disarming him. For the first time in years, Ryan found himself smiling genuinely, caught up in the moment. As the night wore on, he felt himself slipping into unfamiliar territory, drawn deeper into Maya's world. He could feel his carefully constructed walls crumbling with every laugh, every shared glance. And though he tried to deny it, he knew there was no going back. Whatever this was between them, it was dangerous, yet he was helpless against the pull. Over the following weeks, Ryan found himself seeking Maya out more often. What started as coincidences turned into intentional visits, his reasons growing thinner each time. They would meet at a nearby park, a bar, or wherever fate brought them, each encounter filling him with a sense of thrill he hadn't felt in years. Their conversations were filled with an electric tension, a magnetic pull that both thrilled and terrified him. They talked about their lives, their dreams, and the barriers that divided them. Maya spoke of her experiences with casual prejudice, of the challenges she faced, and Ryan found himself feeling a strange mix of guilt and empathy he hadn't anticipated. One evening, as they sat in a quiet spot by the river, their conversation took a more personal turn. They shared a lingering glance, the space between them charged with an unspoken desire. Without fully realizing it, Ryan reached out and touched her hand, a spark running through his fingertips. He pulled back quickly, but the gesture had shattered the boundary between them. Maya held his gaze, her eyes intense and searching. "Why are you really here, Ryan?" she asked softly, her voice carrying both curiosity and caution. Ryan swallowed hard, feeling the weight of his own conflicting emotions. He didn't have an answer, not one that made sense. All he knew was that Maya had stirred something within him, a longing he couldn't ignore. In that moment, his defenses broke completely, and he leaned in, their lips meeting in a hesitant, tender kiss. It was the culmination of weeks of tension, a release of everything they'd both been holding back. As they pulled apart, Ryan felt a mixture of exhilaration and dread, realizing that he'd crossed a line he could never uncross. Ryan knew he had to keep his relationship with Maya a secret, for both their sakes. His reputation, his career, and everything he'd worked for depended on maintaining the facade of his rigid beliefs. But he couldn't stay away from her. Every moment they spent together only deepened his attachment, and he found himself falling harder than he ever thought possible. Maya, too, was torn. She was drawn to Ryan's vulnerability, his willingness to see beyond his prejudices. But she was also painfully aware of the risks. She had always been cautious, understanding the dangers of loving someone from a different world, someone with the power to hurt her. And yet, with Ryan, she felt a connection she couldn't deny. Their meetings became clandestine, each one filled with the thrill of secrecy, but shadowed by the fear of discovery. Ryan would sneak away from his duties, creating elaborate lies to cover his tracks, and Maya would wait for him, her heart pounding each time they met. But as their bond deepened, so did the danger. Maya began receiving strange looks in her neighborhood, and whispers followed her in public spaces. It was as though people could sense her secret, the forbidden love she was harboring. Ryan, too, started noticing his colleagues casting suspicious glances his way, as if they were beginning to see through his carefully constructed facade. Despite the looming threat, they couldn't let go. Each stolen moment felt more precious, more intense, as if the danger only heightened their connection. But deep down, they both knew that secrets had a way of surfacing. And when they did, their love would face its greatest test yet. Days turned into weeks, and Ryan and Maya's bond deepened. They continued meeting in secret, savoring each stolen moment, their attraction now evolving into something more intense and complicated. The thrill of being together was matched only by the weight of the consequences they both knew could shatter their worlds. One night, after an evening at Maya's apartment, Ryan lay beside her, his mind racing. He knew he was risking everything: his career, his reputation, and his standing in the community. As a cop with a strict reputation, being seen with a black woman, particularly in a romantic context, would destroy him in the eyes of those who admired his rigid worldview. Yet, lying there, watching her sleep, he realized that his attraction had grown into something far more profound. She had become a part of him, and walking away felt impossible. Maya, too, was struggling with her feelings. Her own friends and family had noticed her absences and subtle changes, but she dared not tell them the truth. Loving a man like Ryan was dangerous, and she had always known it. Yet, when she looked into his eyes, she saw someone willing to face his own flaws and biases, and she clung to the hope that maybe, just maybe, he could change. The next morning, as they parted ways, they both carried a sense of dread that weighed heavily on them. Their love was real, but it came at a cost neither of them could afford. And as Ryan returned to his duties, he wondered how long they could keep their secret under wraps, or if he even wanted to. As their secret affair continued, they became more cautious. Ryan began to sense that his colleagues were growing suspicious. Small remarks and curious glances from other officers began to feel like silent accusations, and he knew he was playing a dangerous game. One evening, after a brief meeting with Maya at a secluded park, Ryan headed back to his patrol car. Just as he started the engine, he noticed a figure standing near the edge of the park. It was Officer Blake, one of his colleagues, a man known for his curiosity and tendency to meddle in others' affairs. "Ryan," Blake called out, strolling over with a smirk. "Didn't expect to see you around here this late." Ryan's heart pounded, but he kept his face impassive. "Just finishing up some routine patrol work," he replied smoothly, hoping Blake hadn't seen him with Maya. Blake raised an eyebrow, as if unconvinced, but didn't press the matter. As he turned to leave, Ryan felt a chill run down his spine. He had been careful, but he couldn't shake the feeling that his colleague was onto something. The incident left him shaken, a reminder of how precarious their situation truly was. That night, he lay awake, realizing the magnitude of the risk he was taking. The walls were closing in, and if he wasn't careful, he'd lose everything. The following week, Ryan was called into his supervisor's office. Sitting across from Captain Moore, a seasoned officer with a stern gaze, Ryan felt a surge of anxiety. "Cole, I've been hearing some rumors," the captain began, his eyes narrowing. "You've been spending a lot of time in certain neighborhoods, off-duty." Ryan's throat tightened, but he kept his voice steady. "Just making sure everything's under control, sir." The captain's gaze lingered, assessing. "We both know what kind of image you have, Cole. People look up to you, respect you. I'd hate to see that reputation tarnished." The words hung in the air, a warning and a threat rolled into one. Ryan nodded, assuring his boss that he'd be more careful. But as he left the office, a wave of anger and frustration washed over him. The world he'd once fit into so easily was now strangling him, and he felt trapped between loyalty to his career and his newfound love. Determined not to let anyone control his life, Ryan decided that he and Maya would have to be even more discreet. They both knew the dangers, but couldn't bring themselves to let go, even as the risks mounted. As news of Ryan's frequent visits to Maya's neighborhood spread, whispers began circulating within the community. Some residents grew suspicious, wondering why a cop like him would spend so much time there without official business. Maya's friends and neighbors noticed the change too, though no one dared ask her directly. One evening, Maya's close friend Tasha confronted her. "Maya, you've been different lately, and people are starting to talk. Are you seeing someone?" Maya hesitated, but the pressure of keeping the secret weighed heavily on her. She trusted Tasha and knew she couldn't keep her friend in the dark forever. "Yes," she admitted quietly, avoiding Tasha's gaze. "But it's complicated. He's not someone you'd expect." Tasha's eyes widened in shock. She didn't pry, but her expression spoke volumes. Maya knew that Tasha disapproved, yet she also understood the intensity of the bond Maya shared with Ryan. As Maya walked home, she felt a deep sense of unease. Her life was slowly becoming entangled in a web of secrecy, and she was painfully aware of how quickly things could unravel. But no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't deny her feelings for Ryan, even if it meant sacrificing everything she'd built. Their meetings became fewer, and every moment they shared was laced with tension. Ryan was becoming increasingly paranoid, feeling the eyes of his colleagues and community on him wherever he went. Maya, too, felt the strain. The love that had once been thrilling was now filled with fear, and the weight of secrecy was crushing them both. One night, as they sat together in Maya's apartment, Ryan could no longer keep his frustration bottled up. "Maya, I can't keep living like this," he admitted, his voice heavy with emotion. "The lies, the sneaking around, I'm losing myself." Maya looked away, her heart aching. "Then maybe it's time to end this," she whispered, the words cutting through her like a knife. A silence fell between them, filled with the unsaid words and regrets that had been building for months. They both knew they couldn't continue like this, yet the thought of separation felt unbearable. As Ryan left that night, he felt a hollow emptiness settling in his chest. They had both reached their breaking point, but neither could let go. Little did they know, their next steps would lead them down a path of irreversible consequences. Ryan was at home, trying to clear his mind, when he heard a knock at his door. Surprised, he opened it to find Tasha, Maya's friend, standing there. She looked around nervously before stepping inside. "I need to talk to you," she said bluntly. "Maya doesn't know I'm here, and she'd be furious if she did. But you need to know what's happening." Ryan's heart pounded as Tasha explained that Maya's neighbors had begun gossiping, and some had even suggested that they knew she was involved with a cop. There was talk of people watching her, suspecting that she was hiding something scandalous. "I came because I care about Maya," Tasha said, her voice shaking. "I don't know what you two have going on, but it's dangerous. If you care about her, you'll let her go." The word struck Ryan deeply. He knew Tasha was right. He'd seen the looks, felt the judgment, but he hadn't realized how much it was affecting Maya's life. As Tasha left, Ryan felt torn between his love for Maya and the reality that their relationship was tearing her world apart. That night, he sat in silence, wrestling with his choices. Letting Maya go felt impossible, but he couldn't bear to put her through more scrutiny. He knew a decision was coming, and he dreaded it. The following week, Ryan was summoned to a private meeting with Captain Moore. The captain's face was grim as he spoke. "Ryan, I'm going to ask you this once. Are you involved with anyone that could complicate things?" Ryan felt his pulse quicken, but he forced himself to stay calm. "I don't know what you're talking about, sir." The captain's gaze hardened. "I think you do. You're a good cop, Ryan. But if you're tangled up in something that threatens the department's reputation, I'll have no choice but to take action. Are we clear?" Ryan nodded, feeling a mixture of anger and shame. The captain was giving him a choice, his career or Maya. He knew what was expected of him, but the thought of leaving Maya tore at him. His world felt like it was closing in, and every move he made seemed to push him closer to a painful decision. Leaving the office, he struggled to think clearly. He couldn't let his career go, his life's work, his identity. But he also couldn't imagine a life without Maya. He was trapped, forced to choose between love and duty. Unable to bear the weight of his situation any longer, Ryan went to Maya's apartment that night. She opened the door, surprised but happy to see him. Yet the sadness in his eyes made her heart sink. "Maya," he began, his voice barely above a whisper, "we need to talk." She nodded, sensing the gravity of the moment, and they sat down. Ryan struggled to find the words, but finally he spoke. "I can't keep doing this. My career, my reputation, it's all falling apart, and you're being hurt because of me." Tears filled Maya's eyes as she listened, realizing where this was going. She reached out, taking his hand. "Ryan, we knew this would be hard, but I thought we were strong enough to face it together." He looked down, guilt consuming him. "I love you, Maya, more than I ever thought possible. But I can't watch you suffer because of me. I can't let my choices ruin your life." The words hung in the air, heavy with finality. They both knew that this was the end, yet neither wanted to let go. In silence, they held each other, clinging to the last moments they'd share. And as Ryan walked away, he felt a hollow emptiness that he knew would never fully heal. The days that followed were filled with sorrow and emptiness. Ryan threw himself into his work, using it as a distraction from the pain. But no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't escape the memories of Maya. The warmth of her smile, the depth of her gaze. She haunted him, a constant reminder of what he had lost. Maya, too, struggled to move on. She kept to herself, avoiding the friends and neighbors who had once been her confidants. Tasha tried to comfort her, but Maya's heart was broken, and no words could ease her pain. She replayed their final moments together, wondering if she'd made a mistake, if she should have fought harder. Yet, deep down, both of them knew that their love had been doomed from the start. They were two people from different worlds, torn apart by a society that refused to accept them. And as they went about their lives, they both carried the weight of a love they could never truly let go. A month had passed since their breakup, and Ryan was trying to piece his life back together when he received an unexpected call. It was Maya. "Ryan, I know this is strange, but I need to see you," she said, her voice tense. Ryan's heart raced. He hadn't expected to hear from her again, and his emotions surged to the surface. Without hesitation, he agreed, meeting her at a quiet cafe on the outskirts of town. When they saw each other, the unspoken tension was palpable. Maya's expression was serious, her eyes shadowed by worry. "Ryan, something's happened," she began, her voice shaky. "There's been someone following me, watching me. I don't know who it is, but I'm scared." Ryan felt a surge of anger and protectiveness. He knew he should have kept his distance, but hearing that Maya was in danger shattered his resolve. He promised to look into it, determined to keep her safe, no matter the cost. Their reunion was bittersweet, and as they parted ways, Ryan felt a renewed sense of purpose. He would protect Maya, even if it meant risking everything he'd fought to preserve. Ryan began investigating Maya's claims, quietly probing for information within his department. He discovered that several officers had been assigned to monitor suspect activity in Maya's neighborhood, an excuse, he realized, to intimidate her and anyone associated with her. Furious, Ryan confronted his colleagues, demanding to know why Maya was being targeted. But his inquiries only raised suspicion, and soon he found himself facing scrutiny. It was clear that those within his department were watching him closely, waiting for him to slip up. Despite the danger, Ryan refused to back down. He couldn't let Maya face this harassment alone, and he wouldn't allow his colleagues to get away with their actions. But he knew he was playing a risky game, one that could cost him his career and potentially his life. With each passing day, the stakes grew higher. He was fighting a battle on two fronts, trying to protect Maya while keeping his own life intact. And as the tension mounted, he realized that their story was far from over. As Ryan continued his investigation, he and Maya grew closer once more. They spent hours together, sharing their fears, their hopes, and their regrets. The love they'd tried to bury resurfaced, stronger and more passionate than before. In each other's arms, they found solace and strength, knowing that their connection was worth every risk. But their rekindled romance came with new dangers. The more time they spent together, the more they exposed themselves to scrutiny. Ryan knew that their love could cost him everything, yet he couldn't bring himself to walk away again. For better or worse, they were bound together, and no force in the world could tear them apart. As they clung to each other, they both knew that their love story was on borrowed time. The forces around them were closing in, and they could only hold on and hope that love would be enough to carry them through. Ryan and Maya's rekindled relationship brought a glimmer of hope back into their lives, but this was short-lived. One evening, as Ryan left Maya's apartment, he noticed a small piece of paper tucked under his windshield wiper. His pulse quickened as he read the ominous note. "You're being watched. Stay in line." He scanned the darkened street, but no one was in sight. Shaken, he quickly drove off, paranoia seeping into his thoughts. The message was clear. Someone within his own department was onto him and wanted to keep him in check. When he told Maya about it, she grew visibly tense. "Ryan, this is getting dangerous. Whoever left that note knows about us, and they're not going to stop until they scare you off or worse." But Ryan refused to back down. He vowed to protect her, even if it meant confronting his own colleagues. Yet he knew he couldn't ignore the escalating threats, and he began to wonder just how far his enemies were willing to go. Determined to uncover the truth, Ryan took a bolder approach. He began gathering information, reaching out to trusted contacts, and discreetly asking questions within the department. But each inquiry only deepened his suspicion. He uncovered hints of a hidden network, a group of officers who shared a disdain for people like Maya and would do anything to keep their lives pure. As the pieces of the puzzle began to come together, Ryan realized he was up against a powerful force, one that wouldn't hesitate to ruin him. But his love for Maya gave him the courage to continue, even as he sensed the noose tightening around him. He knew they were getting closer to the truth, and with every step, the danger loomed larger. Meanwhile, Maya's life had become a prison of fear. She found herself constantly looking over her shoulder, and her neighbors had grown colder, their judgment heavy and unforgiving. The love that once filled her heart was now shadowed by a gnawing fear. Yet she refused to abandon Ryan, even as they both spiraled into darkness. One evening, Ryan received a call that made his blood run cold. It was Tasha, frantic and nearly in tears. "Ryan, you need to get to Maya's place now. There's a group of people outside. They're shouting, threatening her." Without a second thought, Ryan sped to Maya's apartment. As he arrived, he saw a small group of people gathered outside her building, yelling obscenities and demanding that she leave their neighborhood. His heart pounded as he pushed through the crowd, his presence momentarily silencing them. Ryan confronted the crowd, his voice firm. "Anyone who doesn't leave now will be answering to me." But as they dispersed, he knew the message had been sent. Maya wasn't welcome, and neither was he. Inside, he found Maya shaken but defiant. "They're not going to drive us apart, Ryan," she said, her voice strong. "We've come too far to let them win." Their bond felt stronger than ever, but they both knew the fight was far from over. Forces were moving against them, and the next strike would likely be even more dangerous. As Ryan continued his investigation, he was blindsided by a betrayal. One evening, Officer Blake approached him with a smirk, as if he'd been waiting for this moment. "Heard you've been causing quite a stir, Ryan," Blake said, his voice laced with contempt. "You should know better than to mix with people like her." Ryan clenched his fists, his anger barely contained. He realized that Blake wasn't just an officer. He was part of the group determined to keep people like Maya and him apart. Blake's words confirmed what Ryan had feared. There was a concerted effort within the department to sabotage his relationship. "You're on the wrong side, Blake," Ryan replied, his voice steady. "And you'll regret it." But Blake just laughed, knowing that he held the upper hand. Ryan felt a chill run down his spine as he realized that his enemy wasn't just a nameless shadow. It was someone close to him, someone he once considered a friend. Despite his efforts to keep their relationship hidden, rumors had spread. Ryan's colleagues whispered about his betrayal, and Maya's neighbors treated her with open disdain. They both felt the weight of their secret, and they knew it was only a matter of time before it exploded. The breaking point came when someone leaked a photo of them together, captured during one of their clandestine meetings. The image quickly circulated, sparking outrage among the community and within the department. Ryan's superiors called him in, demanding answers, and Maya found herself facing the harsh judgment of those around her. The exposure of their love felt like a death sentence, but Ryan and Maya refused to let it destroy them. They faced the fallout together, their love a shield against the world's hatred. But as the tension escalated, they knew that the next steps would be the most dangerous of all. Facing disciplinary action and the potential end of his career, Ryan decided to take a stand. He confronted Captain Moore and demanded that the harassment against Maya stop. But the captain's response was cold and unsympathetic. "You brought this on yourself, Cole," he said. "You chose this path." Undeterred, Ryan appealed to the community, speaking out against the prejudice that had torn his life apart. His words struck a chord with some, but they also ignited a firestorm of anger from those who wanted him silenced. Maya, too, found herself caught in the crossfire. She received threats and was ostracized by her own neighbors, who saw her as a symbol of defiance. But she stood firm, knowing that their love was worth every sacrifice. Together, they prepared for the battle ahead, knowing that their last stand would determine whether love could truly conquer hate. The strain became unbearable as Ryan and Maya's world crumbled around them. They faced harassment, threats, and isolation, yet their love remained unbroken. But as the walls closed in, they began to wonder if their love was enough to withstand the hatred they faced. One night, Ryan found himself at his lowest point. He questioned everything, doubting his decision to stay by Maya's side. But as he looked into her eyes, he saw a strength and resilience that reignited his resolve. They had come too far to give up now. Determined to prove that love could endure, they resolved to fight for each other, no matter the cost. They knew their journey was coming to an end, but they were ready to face whatever lay ahead together. In a final act of defiance, Ryan and Maya held a public gathering, inviting friends, family, and anyone who supported their love. They stood together, hand in hand, proclaiming their right to be together despite the obstacles they had faced. The event was a powerful symbol of unity, a reminder that love could transcend even the deepest divides. The crowd was a mix of supporters and skeptics, but as they shared their story, they saw faces soften and hearts begin to change. Their love had become a beacon, a testament to the power of unity in the face of hatred. In the end, Ryan lost his job, and Maya had to leave her apartment, but they found solace in each other. They moved to a new city, far from the memories of their past, and began a new life together. The journey had been painful, filled with loss and sacrifice, but their love endured, stronger and more resilient than ever. Their story became a legend, a tale of forbidden love that defied the odds, a reminder to others that love, in all its forms, was worth fighting for. And as they looked to the future, they knew that no force in the world could ever break the bond they shared. Thanks for watching. What your take about this story, let me know in the comments section below. Don't forget to subscribe and like this video. Love you.